Like these things will keep growing and growing, and we'll get to a GPT-10 where it's not only trained on data publicly available, but I can plug it with my home automation, and and it's reading the events, the camera movements, how many times I switched on the lights, it's plugged into my car, and it knows the trips that I have done. It's plugged into my keyboard, and it knows. I mean, it's scary as hell.
It is scary. It is very scary. But just one thing you said that was very interesting. You said
the first question is the CCP, I think that's the Cloud Practitioner certification, any good for people practicing SRE/DevOps roles? And should they start with it or jump ahead to the Solution Architect Associate? Let me take a stab at this, and Abdel, let me know what you think. So the Cloud Practitioner certificate is really a beginner certificate. It's really a certificate for someone who deals with the cloud on a regular basis, but they don't have to build and deploy stuff on the cloud, right? So you want to understand the billing in the cloud. You want to understand the value proposition that the cloud brings in. You want to understand the difference between a VM, between a container, what that serverless brings to the table, what is a database, what is a NoSQL database. You want to understand all these things, but you don't have to build stuff on the cloud. So basically, the people I see benefiting a lot from the Cloud Practitioner are people who are in a managerial position. So say you're a manager, and then your developers, your team build and deploys and maintain stuff on the cloud, and you want to talk their language and you want to understand their problems. So that's the kind of certificate I would advise you to go to. It will not give you all the tools you need, and it will not prepare you for DevOps, for a platform or a reliability engineer or a DevOps role. What do you think, Abdel? What's your take on this?
To be honest, I've never, while you were talking, I was looking into what it is actually.
Okay. Yeah, this is an AWS certificate. Yeah.
Okay, it's an AWS one. Okay. I mean, if it's beginner certificate, we have something similar on Google, which is the Certified Digital Leader or something. So, did you cut off your camera, Ilyas? Are you still around?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes. Okay. Cool. That's fine. So anyway, so I would say, like, if you say it's a basic certificate, it's like for beginners, then it's probably not worth it for somebody who wants to learn SRE or DevOps. But I'm not going to answer the question directly. I'm just going to take a different like route to it, which is like, I think people have to understand one thing, is that SRE and DevOps are two different things, right? Extremely different things. And neither of them is an actual set of technical things. It's just a framework for a way of organizing people around managing systems, right?
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset, exactly. So DevOps is a generic thing, right? That's why one of the things I don't like people when they say they're a DevOps engineer. That doesn't mean anything, right? So like, it doesn't have a meaning. So DevOps is a set of practices. There is a book called the DevOps Cookbook or Handbook or something. We'll find the link and put it in chat later. That I highly recommend people to look at, which explains the basics. SRE is an implementation of DevOps. So it's our implementation. Well, it's Google implementation, which now everybody does it. And there is also a book if you want to understand what SRE is. I would highly recommend to read the books first. Just go read what DevOps means in the DevOps handbook book. And then we have 3 books around SRE, and I think sre.google.com or sre.google. You will find the 3 books. They're free to download. To give you a more concrete example, I did a rotation with SRE at Google. When I was working in Belgium, I went to Dublin for a rotation. It was remote, but it was a rotation. So I went there. I did a rotation with an SRE team, Colossus team, Colossus is our internal distributed file system. And when I was interviewing, they were mostly interviewing me around my knowledge of Linux, networking, and distributed systems. There was no such a thing as an SRE interview. It was all very computer science fundamentals interviews. Like, do you understand how things work, basically? And that's mostly my understanding is that the interview I got was a mini version of the actual interview we do for external candidates. but I was told that's the same exact thing. These are the things we look at: distributed systems, Linux, or operating systems in general, networking, security, stuff like that, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that, like, even if you want to interview for an SRE role at Google, which we have been accredited for creating SRE, you're not going to be interviewed about something specific to SRE, right? It's more your basic knowledge of and programming, obviously. So yeah, that would be my take into it.
Got it. Yeah, this it's something that keeps coming, again and again, and I totally agree with you. I want my developers to be DevOps, like to have the DevOps mentality, to not only build their code, but build the infrastructure on which their code run and monitor it and maintain it, and use all these tools that we call DevOps tools. But it seems that in the enterprise world, there is this distinction between DevOps. Like, people want to be called DevOps, and even when in the company I'm working right now, when I call them platform engineers, there's some people who push back. There's some pushback. So we have Atul asking us a question. Okay, so what? Oh, this is the DevOps handbook.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'll add this also to the notes of the episode. So Atul has a question: layoffs and job cuts across the tech industry, and how to prepare. How long you've been at Google, Abdel?
9 years.
9 years.
9 years and counting.
Okay. During these 9 years, have you ever thought about leaving Google?
No. I have interviewed. I have had interviews. I have had recruiters reach out to me, but I have not found anything that was interesting so far, considering the current set of circumstances.
So you think the fact that you didn't leave Google is actually the lack of opportunities out there? You haven't found anything that would get as close as what you're getting, in a company like Google.
Correct. And also, mostly that. Either the interviews I did, either they were a lot of I don't know about you, but I got a lot of times approached by startups. Startups do like to approach people that work in FANG because experience, you know things. And a lot of times their proposals is usually some sort of salary plus equity. And, there is a certain level of risk you have to be
able to... And a lot of risk. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There is a certain level of risk you will have to take into this. My take into startups is basically, if it's not mine, if I haven't built it, I don't want to work at a startup again. Because I worked with startups before. Otherwise, here in Sweden, where I am right now, there isn't really that much product companies. So companies making products. A lot of times I get approached by, companies that want to work. Spotify is okay. That's a very good one. I have been approached by Spotify, but I did not like the role they proposed to me. Basically, so I said no. So yeah.
Yeah, and during these 9 years, have you had the chance to interview people?
Oh yes, a lot of them. I think I am number 2 or 3 interviewer in EMEA or something. Did a lot of interviews.
All right. You know where I'm going. So you must have a ton of experience interviewing people, reviewing resumes. What would you say to someone who is preparing their resumes in the current economic downturn? Our economy, our sector, our industry is cyclical. There are times where money is pouring on, sky is the limit, everyone is going grow. Why do we even need automation? We can just hire 5 people. I mean, great companies always automate, but during this, like the times where we were before COVID, right? There was just VCs are throwing money, crypto is going up, and then we get to the next cycle, which we are right now, which is all about efficiency.
Yes.
We're not looking to hire more or spend more. We're looking to get more with the resources that we have right now. What is your take on this? Do you think that people should move roles or jobs and start focusing more on roles where they can bring more to the company and focus on efficiency? Do we have to invent new roles, new positions? Do we need to reinvent ourselves and focus on other other sectors, industries? How do you think one should approach the current economic downturn?
That's a very good question. There is a lot to unpack there. But let me try to answer one thing at a time. 20 years ago, no one knew what DevOps is, right? Mm-hmm. Like our industry is very known for just creating things all the time.
And sometimes even taking old things and putting a new name on them and just making it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I like this interview that was done with an economist that I follow. I forgot his name, American economist. And he was asked about this specific question, but more generic, like and at the jobs level in general. Mm-hmm. And he said basically, it was 60 years ago, we didn't know what a developer is, right? So you cannot predict the future, right? Like basically let's just take something that is more, maybe more our background and more kind of close to us because we see it. Is 20 years ago 15 years ago when cloud showed up. AWS is 21 years old, right?
2005, 2006. Yeah.
So 20 years ago when AWS released cloud, everybody was scared saying, oh, they're going to take away infrastructure. So what are we going to do with all this infrastructure people that work here, right? Have anybody experienced layoffs because of AWS? I don't think so, right? I think that's arguably your ability to reinvent yourself is the most important skill that you should have as a tech person. Your ability to adapt and adjust and not be stuck in one thing that it's like with the mindset of like, I only want to work on this technology or on this thing. And even if you do, our industry have proved that things disappeared and come back. Like beginning of COVID, the mayor of New York was looking for people who does COBOL, right? Which was crazy.
I didn't follow that story. Did he find anyone?
Yes. Well, I don't know if they found it, but in a press conference, he would say like, we want people who know, because that's the system they use to some sort of like social aid system was written in COBOL, and they needed people to help them to maintain the system because they were taking in applications from citizens. So I remember when I was in Belgium about seven years ago, a colleague of mine, his girlfriend was doing, in France, they have this thing called Pôle emploi, which is the
Steve kind of Jobs. That's how I call it.
Steve Jobs. Yeah, it's the unemployment agency. If you want, you register with them, they help you find a job, etc. And what these agencies do from time to time is that they offer to people training opportunities. And the girlfriend of my colleague back in the days, she was training to become a COBOL developer because France was lacking COBOL developers. So they actually created the whole program for a year, and they got people in for free. And I think they were paid something, and they were just learning how to become a COBOL developer, and they were promised a job.
So, sorry to interrupt, but don't you think that it would be more efficient to modernize these old systems rather than invest in informing people to maintain these old systems? Because at some point, they're just going to be too old.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. In a perfect world, you would click a button and change everything, but you know how migrations work, right? It takes time. So the question here is, what do we do in the meanwhile while you are moving toward a more modern stack?
You still have to maintain.
Okay. They are probably doing. I mean, I know that banks. I worked with banks in my experience with cloud, and I know they are in the. Actually, we did. I think we acquired a company in the Netherlands. Google acquired a company in the Netherlands that does automatic COBOL to Java code migration. So they wrote a tool that reads COBOL and spits out Java code, and but Java source code, not Java binaries. Actually, by the way, it was crazy how they were able to do it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to say here is that your ability as a person to reinvent yourself and learn new things is arguably the most important thing, especially in this uncertain time, if you want, right? And as I just yesterday or the day before, I was with the Geeks Blah Blah folks in their online conference, Blah Blah Conf, and I did my talk, which was several lessons learned from becoming a senior engineer. And one of the lessons I shared in that talk was, the more senior you become in a company, the more what's important or the value you're bringing to the table is your experience, not your knowledge, right? It's the fact that you have been around for a while and you know how things work and you know how they scale and they don't scale. This is even more important than actually knowing the technology itself, right? Knowing technology is all cool, but the company pays you because you have experience. That's what they pay you for. So to answer your question, should we change jobs? I mean, I think it really depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to make more money and there is somebody offering you more money, go for it. Knock yourself down. If your goal is to help a company really do something interesting and either grow or optimize or something that is like that you have expertise on and you will feel fulfilled by doing it, go for it, I would say. If I am right now in the mindset of like, should I actually start my own startup, right? Because that's more appealing to me, because there is, I mean, COVID has showed us that as a society, we are lacking certain things. There are certain aspects of our life that we have just taken for granted. And then when there is a pandemic, which we're going to have another one in 10 years for sure, we're going to just struggle again with the same things, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a very hard question to answer, in the sense that, like, it really depends on what your goal is as a person. How to, yeah, but go ahead, and then we can talk about how to prepare.
Okay. I like you. I believe that every technology is but a step to the next technology. It's nothing is gonna stay forever. But I just want to take a step back and think about the people who are affected by the layoffs. Like, these people, they don't have, like, they have to take a decision right now, today. They don't have the choice, or they don't have the luxury to just sit back and, think, I'm probably going to think about creating, for example, my startup, or maybe I should, start interviewing, because that time is gone. They don't have that luxury. What do you think from your perspective? I'm just throwing a hard question at you, I know. But from your perspective, as someone who interviewed a ton of people, and like, you see the trends in resumes, and you see the trends also in where people leave to come to interview to Google, for example. Would you say that the cloud can still provide that security, or FANG company can still provide that kind of security for the future? Or it's better to, as you said, no, you know what? If you find yourself, you're back against the wall, you lost your job, it's better to start your own company. Do you think that, for example, a developer's job is something to really invest heavily on, because we're still going to have developers for the next 5-10 years? Are we better with the cloud moving and with the cloud, like, opening these new doors? Maybe you think that security in the cloud is the best option. Maybe you think platform is the best option going forward. I know, like, it's a tough question. I just want to pick your brain and see what do you think about it.
It's a very good question. I mean, I don't think that FANG can provide job security. I mean, it's true that none of the big companies so far, except Facebook, have announced layoffs. Some companies have announced that they are shrinking or refocusing their workforce on some other stuff, like, we discontinue Stadia, maybe Microsoft tomorrow will stop something, or AWS will say, okay, we're not going to invest money in this service or whatever.
Alexa, they're like stopping development of Alexa right now.
Yeah. There you go. That's a very good example. So, and you just triggered your Alexa. I think that's again goes back to the point of your ability to just learn new things is very important, right? Your ability to just like move somewhere else in different parts of the company and just refocus your work on something else is very important. So back to your question about like resumes and stuff. So I can share a couple of things that I have seen in my experience that you should probably avoid doing. I do not like, personally, I do not like people when they have a resume where they have this paragraph in the beginning of the resume where they talk about themselves in the third person. Okay, especially when it's like a lot of fluff, I'm like a goal-oriented, whatever, like no one cares about that. Yeah, exactly. Just don't do that. Just skip it. Make sure your resume is as short and straight to the point as possible. Those stuff about who you are and talking about yourself in the third person is better put in a cover letter if you feel like writing a cover letter. If you feel like you want to tell the recruiter something that would not be obvious in a resume, maybe write a cover letter or just put it in your email, right? Mm-hmm. But most of the time, a recruiter, if they pick up your resume, they will want to have a first talk with you, right? So you will have an opportunity to tell them in person anyway. Don't talk about technologies that you don't put technologies you don't understand in your resume, period. Because the more stuff you have there, the more I'm gonna try to pick your brain on everything, right? That's just a thing.
Kind of push you until I get to your limits, until I know your limits.
Exactly. And in our interviews, I don't know about AWS, but in our interviews, we have our interviews are open-ended questions. So the question starts with design a system that does X, and then we keep expanding on that, right? So that's basically where you get to check the knowledge of people on every layer of the stack: security, web, APIs, distributed systems, blah blah, databases, blah blah blah. So at some point you're gonna be. I mean, at some point you'll reach a point where you can't answer anymore, and that's fine. And that's how we actually get to assess how much you know. It's fine to say I don't know if you are doing an interview. It's totally and absolutely okay to just not know things. It's better than trying to know things that you don't know.
And the interviewer will smell it right away.
Yes,
you
exactly.
will know right away when someone is just trying to BS you.
Yeah. And I would say the one last thing is, like, generally speaking, a red flag for me in the resume is people who do job hunting, job jumping. So you just go from one job to another every year, changing companies. That's usually a very bad. I mean, if you have,
I do that.
But if you have only spent like three months or 6 months in a company and then you move to another company, that could be an indication that you just didn't like it, which is fine, right? Although I would arguably say if you only spent 3 months in a company and jumped somewhere else because you didn't like it, just don't put it in your resume. Like, there is no point.
That's true. Well, for me, there's like the beginning of the career and then the mid level or seniority of the career. So when I started my career, I used to jump a lot. I used to spend like 1 year, 14 months, 15 months in a company and then jump to another one. And why? Is because I wanted to learn as much as I can, solve as many problems as I can. And also, the easiest way to increase your salary is to actually change the company. Like, you can stay in a company and get a promotion, and that's what, 5%, 10%, 10% if you're lucky. But then you can change, the company and get a little bit more. But then I would say in my mid level, that's where I started to spend a little bit more time in the company, and that's pretty much my advice. Like, when you're starting your career, jump. Feel free to experience new things, to fail. Maybe, like, I worked with this startup. We were building this machine learning stuff before the term machine learning became the buzzword that it is today. We didn't call it machine learning. We hired someone who had a PhD in data classification and stuff, and we used to aggregate data and run the supervised and unsupervised stuff on it, and then try to mine it and get information from it. And that was great. It opened some doors for me, but then I realized, no, that's not what I want. So, like, I changed it maybe 9 months, 10 months into, and I changed something else. So I get exactly what you say, but this is why I still give people the benefit of the doubt. If I see someone doing what I call is job jumping, not job bunny. Like, I see someone like, you're a job bunny. Like, you just jump between one. Like, I always try to ask why, and one of the accepted answers for me is, I didn't like it, or I was looking for more money. That's a really accepted answer for me. It's when I ask someone, tell me about your achievements in a company, one of the accepted answers is, I made them more money. Like, this is something that I totally like. I love it when someone tells me, in my previous job, I increased, the revenue by like 50%. For me, it's way better than someone who just lists their, job responsibilities. I have actually an episode about resumes that I'm gonna take a little bit of bits of what you just said, and I'm gonna add them into that episode as well. So for people who find themselves, there's a huge layoff right now happening, and so for people who find themselves out of a job, would you say it's a case per case scenario? There's no generic answer. For some people, the best thing is to reinvent themselves.
Yep.
And try something else. Maybe you have been a developer for a while. Now you go to the market, you go to LinkedIn, and then you see there are more openings towards DevOps. Take some time, do a couple of trainings, courses, certifications, and try to reinvent yourself, in a DevOps world, right? Or maybe I've seen some people who have been tech leads, and they're reinventing themselves into product owners.
Yes.
They've been there, right? They've built products, they've managed teams, they focused on it from a technical side, but now there's this opportunity to focus on them, from a product side. And I always appreciate it when I interview someone and he says, this is a new frontier for me. I'm willing to learn. I have this ability to learn. I'm willing to put in the work. At the end of the day, we're not born, this Moroccan say, no one is born a sage or a savant or a scientist or someone like
wise
that. Like
person,
a wise person, right? We always have to learn.
Yeah. I would add two things to that. Like I've seen people who have a community around them or are part of some sort of community are more successful at getting jobs after they are laid off. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go create a Twitter account and start writing stuff on the internet today, but being part of community could also be you're part of some sort of online forum, or you're helping people on Stack Overflow, or you are doing meetups, or you go to meet people who use the same technologies as you in your local area, right? You're part of some sort of community. That helps in the sense that you have a network, you have people you know. Like our industry is arguably not the geeky type anymore that we used to be like 25 years ago, where you're sitting in your basement and doing things by yourself. People like this still exist, right? But it's more and more kind of community-based or community-oriented. One more thing I would add is maybe participate in some or contribute to open source. I mean, there are companies now that would pay you to maintain open source code. So just pick some project that you like and start maybe contributing to it. And contributing to open source does not have to be contributing to code. You could start with documentation. You could start with testing. You could start with, anything that just is up your level of expertise. And then you talked about learn some new new stuff. One thing I like also to advise people is don't I like to call this skip the titles. When you're looking for jobs, don't just read the title, read the actual description of what the job is about. A lot of times people post a DevOps job, but it's a developer job what they're looking for, really.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Or they say, we were looking for an SRE, but they're looking for like a system administrator or like for a database administrator, or they say, we're looking for a cloud engineer, but they're actually just looking for a backend developer. So
real story. Someone wanted to interview about an architect position, and it turned out to be a developer position when I was
Yeah. So like read into the description, email the recruiter, ask them details, schedule 30 minutes and ask as much questions as you can. Like the titles does not always say what the job is about, right? You have to understand it like more deeply, I would say. And yeah, I mean, there are ways you could take time off as well. Like, why not? You be laid off, that's sad, but just take time off to process it. And think about what you want to do. Don't just jump quickly into like the risk as well. If doing things in a hurry is that you would just find yourself with something that you're not happy with, and then the level of dissatisfaction just continues. You'll be laid off, and then you end up doing the job you don't want to do, right?
That's a good point. You know what? When I look at my career, I was fired once, and then I was pushed out of the door once, and in both cases, every time it felt like the world was crumbling, but I got better opportunities afterwards. And I know this also because I talk to a lot of people. Every time like you feel or like you're fired or something like that, it's actually better in the long run. You feel that, it's a hit on the ego, that's for sure. I'm not enough, I'm not good enough and stuff like that. But it pushes you. Like you don't learn by living in a pink world and everything. Like you learn when you go through this. It pushes you. We all like to talk about leaving your comfort zone, but this is the ultimate push out of your comfort zone. And I want to talk about what you mentioned, networking. I would add another aspect to it, remote work. So networking plus remote work opens a ton of opportunities. This is why we are actually doing, I chose this platform because I want to do more events. I want people to network with each other. And I want people from India to start looking at jobs in Ireland, in Sweden, in Germany. And we can. COVID showed us that we actually can do this kind of thing. So networking plus remote. Do you have something else you want to add here? Because I want to move to other subjects.
I was about to say the thing with remote. Yeah, just expand your search circle beyond your town or your city or your country, right? A lot of people would pay you. There are companies today, and I know this because I've been offered a remote job. There are actually companies today that help startups hire remote people. Because one of the main questions become when you want to be hired remotely, like say you're in Canada and you want to work for a company in, I don't know, Sweden. One of the main questions is does that company have a legal entity in Canada so they can pay you and pay social security and pay blah, blah, blah? And the remote positions come in all forms. The most easy one is freelance. So you become a freelance in your own country. You follow your own tax laws, and then you get money from outside. You just send an invoice and get a salary. But there are companies that does this now for you. They can help you remote locally and hire locally remote people and pay these people following the local laws and the local regulations for social security and taxes and everything. So it's becoming more easy. It's becoming even easier actually to do remote now than it was before. So
we have a question from Will about SRE and DevOps. So let's okay, let me read it. At a high level, is there a difference between DevOps and SRE, or is SRE just the Google term for a DevOps way of thinking? So how can you answer this, in a few sentences?
Yes, there is a very key difference. As I said, SRE is an implementation of DevOps methodologies. It's our own implementation, but it's not only ours. Like, we talk about it publicly, so there are a lot of companies now doing SRE as well, the same way we do it. One of the key differences that SRE has versus DevOps is this concept of error budget. So when you have a service and you have an SRE team responsible for that service, the SRE team and the developer team, the product team, they sit down and they agree on an SLA, a service level, SLO, rather, a service level objective. This service is going to be available 99.9% of the time, which means it only can be down 8 minutes per month. Then they will establish and set up a way to track downtime, because you need to be able to measure it, right? So you set up a way to observe and measure downtime. And then based on this observability that you do, you can refocus the development team between shipping new features and focusing on performance and stability. So the whole point of this error budget is some sort of contract between the development team and the SRE team that says, as long as you're below your error budget, as long as your service is not down more than it should be per month, we will allow you to ship new feature, right? But if you blow up your error budget for a month, then we have a right to just say, okay, stop now, and then go focus on stability, right? So this is a very key thing that we do at SRE that doesn't exist technically in DevOps. Otherwise, the two roles are fairly similar. It's all about automation. It's all about a team understanding the entire stack, including the software that runs on top of the thing that run it on. It's all about the automation, the observability. It's all similar. That's why I said in the beginning that what SRE teams, at least as Google, they're looking for is just looking for people who know things, know basics, right? Because like your knowledge of the fundamentals is transferable to any system you're going to work on, right?
For sure.
So that would be the key difference.
What do you think about this GPT-3 thing? Do you think that we're going to be obsolete at some point? I mean, I was writing this Lambda function, and then it gave me an error, and I just went to GPT-3 and I typed the error and said, "What is it?" And it helps me debug. It said, "Oh, you know what? Maybe you want to retry." It was actually, I was writing a Node.js thing, and I forgot to put the await because it was asynchronous, and it told me, "Oh, in order to use this specific thing, you need to actually put it in an asynchronous mode." And I did it, and I had a timeout issue. And then I went to GPT-3 and I said, "Now this is the error that I got." And GPT-3 said, "Oh, you know what? Maybe there's this other thing that you need to look at. Like, are we going to just ask this general purpose text engines in 2-3 years to write whole systems for us and just become obsolete?" What do you think?
So let me ask you a question. How is that different from when you were in the office and you ask your colleague? This is not the same thing.
It is, but now it's faster. It's, I would say, has access to a lot more information, than any human can do. And it has the knowledge of all Stack Overflow put into it. So it can, right? And it thought about, and you know what, it's not biased also. I mean, okay, it is biased to a point, but it's not as biased as a human being would be.
Yes. So let me start with saying this. There was this study that was done few years back. I read the paper. It was very interesting. But basically, it's like a university in the US. I don't remember the name. But basically, they came up with this conclusion that 95% of code bases in any company is open source. So 95% of what people write in companies is just copy-pasted across the internet. In other terms, 95% of all the code bases of all the companies is the same, right? And it's the 3% or the 5%, which is your specific implementation, which is tailored toward your specific business. So if I would have to answer your question, I would say maybe it's not going to make us obsolete, but maybe it's going to make us more focused on the value added business thing rather than the generic stuff. Because the way you describe it to me, like GPT-3 just have to solve some generic stuff, some knowledge that everybody has, and it's already known to the internet, and you just didn't know it at that specific moment. So in a sense, I would say probably GPT-3 will become in 10 years the version of Google It. When people ask you a question, you say Google it, then it becomes like, oh, just ask GPT-3, right?
That was my following question. Do you think that Google should be afraid? Because I could have Googled this problem, but instead of Googling it, I preferred as a person, rather than going and using a browser as an interface and going to Google and going through a list and then choosing, I prefer to ask an engine, in a language that I speak. Do you think that Google should be afraid, or that Google should reinvent itself? I believe that the only reason Google has not come up with something like GPT-3, or has not made, I'm sure that Google has something secret, has not made something like GPT-3 public yet, is because it's hard to push ads in a conversation like that. And we all know that Google is an ad machine, right? So I think that's the only reason. Otherwise, Google would have been like building this. Yeah.
Well, there is obviously the ethical question about chatbots, right? There is the question of like, oh, now you're not just typing your keywords into a search engine, which does a query against the database and gives you a bunch of results. You're talking to a thing which is alive, putting alive between codes, right? So then the question becomes like, and you remember this Microsoft thing that just like they released an AI, and then in 24 hours it became Nazi, anti-immigrant, whatever, because people were feeding it lines, right? So the question then becomes like, can we trust the technology to not take sides? Because it comes pre-trained with a bunch of knowledge, but I think what the key thing with GPT-3 is that it can learn on the spot. It can learn while talking to you as well. It can personalize answers because it knows you, right? And that's why one of the reasons why they ask you to log in, because otherwise just make it publicly available to the internet. Why do you want me to log in? They want you to log in because they want to track who you are, and they want to keep like a personalized model, if you want, for you. So, and then the other thing to keep in mind is that so far we're talking about English. Like there are tons of languages that these things does not understand probably, right? So and then there is also the question of like, is a chat based software or UI the right answer for these kind of things, right? Like, is everybody will be feeling comfortable chatting with something, or people are still comfortable just looking things up on a web page and reading for themselves, right? So,
but how about efficiency? It's efficient. Like if I have to read, like the internet is about selling advertisement. Like advertisements run the world. So if I'm gonna Google something and then I'm gonna go find a website, a blog post, then I'm gonna have to go through 10 paragraphs just to get that one line that I need, because the person who's writing, they need to pay their bills as well. So they need to write more. So they need to go, all this clickbaity stuff, all this. How about an engine that would remove all that and just get me, like, there's a beautiful sense of efficiency to it. And as you said, it would learn, like it. Yeah, that's a slippery slope, because Google also, in order to personalize the experience, needs a ton of your data. And then we hate on Google because we say, oh, you take all our data. But then you think that at some point in GPT-4, GPT-5, they need to consume all this and gather all this amount of personal data in order to be more efficient. And so we'll have the same problem at some point.
Probably. I would say probably, or very likely, because that's the thing. Like, I think that these AIs are good at giving you generic answers. Now it will become like, I would be probably scared if tomorrow I go to a chat bot and I say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a new pair of sneakers, and it will answer me with an ad to the exact pair of sneaker I want, not a generic one, like something that the AI know I would like and I would buy. Because that's the whole point with ads, is that ads is optimized to show you the thing exactly.
Yeah.
So, but in order for it to achieve that, it will have to know and learn things about me.
Yes.
And then we will come to the question of like, is this actually okay, right? Are we fine with having this AI just learning all about our data? It's the same question with ads that we had like 25 years ago, right? So So
I'm actually fine. I'm actually fine with it. I stopped trying to hide stuff from Google a long time ago. I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. That's totally okay. It's just that I think that this all these technology, I'm very skeptical to these things, because when they show up, people think they're going to change the world, but we have to see. There is, of course, a lot of, like, we are looking at it from the perspective of technical people, but there is a lot of other types of content that like, we have to see if this chat GPT-3 thing can actually generate text for it, right? Like content that requires nuance. Reporting on the news, for example, is the kind of content. Reporting on a crime is the kind of content. I just watched, like, here is an example. Here is a very concrete example that I would be curious, and maybe I will do it after this. I will just go ask GPT-3. So there is this podcast that I highly recommend people to read, to listen to, called Day X. It was created by New York Times. And so the TLDR, without going too much into details, is that a few years back, a gun was found in the airport in Vienna, Austria, right? They found a gun somewhere, in like a maintenance person in airport in Vienna found the gun. They set up a trap. They found the person who came back to collect the gun. They like questioned them, let them go. Then later on, they learned that this person was part of a conspiracy theory in Germany, which was plotting to take down the German government. And this like happened. It's like, I don't know if you remember, a few weeks back, Germany announced they arrested a lot of people. That massive arrest they have done was the result of 3-4 years of work on trying to like figure out this network, infiltrate the network. Yeah. And so, and you know, it's like when you read it, it gives you when you listen to it, it gives you chills, because it just reminds me of like Second World War, essentially, because these people are just neo-Nazis, essentially. That's who they are, right? Yeah. And so I would be very curious to see if this GPT-3 would have enough nuance to link the events between what's happened in, 1936 to 1940 something, and what this new thing that have just came up is about, right? Like, would it make a connection? Would it have enough historical context to say, like, oh, this thing looks like XYZ, right? And if I would ask it, hi, can you write me a newspaper or a newsletter or news article about this event that is happening today? Or just very simple, as soon as, or as recent as yesterday, the French guy who went and shot 3 people from the Kurd community in Paris, right?
You're following the news way more than I am. I don't think this is a European thing, because I feel here, I just care about the snow and the blizzard, and we're going through a storm. That's my world.
I see. Okay. Anyway, whatever. So I'd like to see these things tested. Well, because I think so far people are testing them with things that have like straightforward answers, right?
Well, GPT-3 at its core it's a mathematical formula. It's a network that basically got fed all this data, this text on the internet, and tried to predict the next word. That's what it does. Like when you give it 1, 2, 3, like a sequence of words, it tries to predict the next one. Right? At the end of the day, based on the amount of data that it... So that's why if you ask it to write a blog post for you, for example, you will see that it always follows the same model. I played with it. I said, hey, what are the top 10 things that a cloud architect should do? And it just told me, it starts by a definition. What is a cloud architect? And then it gives me 1, 2, 3. And then it ends by a conclusion. So it doesn't, it just a prediction engine. But I'm thinking with time, you can make it. Also, what you can do, what these companies are doing, if you look at Copy AI or there's some companies that add wrappers around GPT-3 and try to add more business logics on top of them. So if you said like this nuance thing could be added with a wrapper around it, so you get the output from GPT-3 and then you plug into a news source, or you plug into a news API, and then you plug into the weather API, and then you try to combine all these and bring something that is up to date. Especially that GPT-3 has been trained, I think, up to data until 2021, so it doesn't have anything current.
After 2021.
Right? But I'm imagining like these things will keep growing and growing, and we'll get to a GPT-10 where it's not only trained on data publicly available, but I can plug it with my home automation, and and it's reading the events, the camera movements, how many times I switched on the lights, it's plugged into my car, and it knows the trips that I have done. It's plugged into my keyboard, and it knows. I mean, it's scary as hell.
It is scary. It is very scary. But just one thing you said that was very interesting. You said that you have asked the thing to write an article about something, and you noticed a pattern, right?
I did.
And that's
Every
actually
time I asked it.
And that's
same
actually
pattern.
that's for me is extremely interesting, because like if you as a human are able to see a pattern of something that is generated by an AI, it just means that the AI is not clever enough, right? Yet. So I think it's funny. I was looking into my pension in Belgium today, because I lived in Belgium for 4 years. So I was looking into like how much money I have there, because I'm trying to get all my pension money together. I don't know how it works in Canada, but we have the equivalent of 401 in Europe.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, so the complementary one. Yeah. So you have the government pension and then the extra pension. So I was looking into that, and so what was the point I was trying to make?
You said that I was able to see a pattern, so it's not clever.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, but I was trying to. Okay, I lost my line of thought.
Okay, that's fine.
I really lost my line of thought. Okay, that's
so fine. At the end of the day,
I don't know. Yeah. Now I remember. Okay, so the pension thing told me how much money I would be making when I go on pension, which is for me 2052, right? So it just made me think, like, we're gonna get to 2052, and this thing is gonna be clever, but you're gonna be old enough that we wouldn't care, I guess.
That's it. Yeah.
So
it would become just part of the daily activity. It's like kids right now. They deal with, for them, iPads is part of their life. They can't imagine a life without an iPad. I remember when we didn't have cell phones, and you had to call someone at their home, and if they're not there, it's just now you can just reach everyone. It's part of life.
So I think we get, as humans, we get overly excited for things when they seem revolutionary. But like, we are very bad at predicting what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years. Like, we would not know. So we can't. So we would not know how this thing is going to evolve. I would say for now, just use it for what it can do. And if what it can do helps you in their day-to-day life, by all means. But just don't overthink it. That's how I approach this topic.
Yeah, you're right. You know why we're biased about the future? Because we predict in a linear fashion. We always take what we have and we try to improve. Like, now we have cars. Oh, the future will have flying cars. Now we have watches. Oh, the future will have holographic watches. But the reality is there's always these forks in the world, right? People had horses, and then at some point we had cars. We didn't have like faster horses, as the legend goes. So we have these forks, and who knows, maybe GPT now, like, I don't know, man. Maybe I've been reading a lot about Neuralink and about they're doing this thing. And so maybe the next fork in the road is we don't even need to use text anymore. It would just be telepathic.
Brain to brain communication.
Brain to a brain. Because text is, like, it's stupid. Like language, I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, I need to talk to you, and it's taking seconds, and it's sequential. It's word after the other word. And if I don't know a specific word, then it's hard for me to convey my thoughts. And then you need to sit there and listen. And then it's, maybe we need something better. Maybe we need to take an idea and then boom, send it, and then you get that idea. So maybe that's going to be the next fork in the road, and in 5 years we don't even need GPT anymore.
Probably. And who would have predicted that the Moroccan football team would make it to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, right?
Not GPT.
not GPT. And I think one thing I want to say is that we live in a bubble where we see things move very fast. And to me, it's always actually interesting to just like make connections between how I see our industry moving and how this is impacting day-to-day life. I can give you a very simple example. Like, there is GPT-3. It's an AI. You can talk to it. It can write articles. When I go to the US, they still take my physical credit card and slide it into a machine. They don't have contactless payments. So
here's an anecdote for you. 5 years ago, when I was renewing my Canadian passport, they asked me, do you want to renew for 5 years or 10 years? And 5 years ago, I said, No, just for 5 years, because in 5 years it's all gonna be digital, and I'm just gonna use my iPhone. Now I have to renew it,
Again,
and it's
for another 5
nothing
years.
changed yet.
Yes,
no.
It's like the real question with this kind of things, with anything basically related to GPT-3 and AI, is how much impact it's going to have on real life. And keep in mind that we are the tech industry where probably 1 or 0.2% of the population on Earth. There is 8 million people of us. So
yeah.
So
That's
so
it? 8 million? That's a
8
real number, or
billion.
you just
No, 8 billion. No. We are 8 billion people on Earth, and we're just a subset of these people.
I thought you said there's 8 million tech people in the world.
No. I don't know how many tech people exist in the world, but like the point I'm trying to make is that there isn't only tech people. There is truck drivers and waiters and doctors and nurses, and there is a bunch of people. And like, how is this thing gonna impact real life is the real question, and not whether it's gonna change anything in the near future. That's probably more hard to answer as a question.
Did you know we have technology to have self-automated driven trains for like 15 years? We have the technology, because a train is like, just go and stop. But the whole reason we don't have self-driven trains is the human aspect.
Yes.
Unions keep pushing it back because it means you're just going to lay off, millions, and I'm not sure about, millions worldwide of people who are train drivers or train. So yeah, I 100% agree. There's the human aspect. Technology itself doesn't, it helps change the world, and sometimes it just pushes us through a cliff, but there's always this human aspect. So if tomorrow, and you see, I'm reading in the news right now, artists who are not happy about this AI tools building, art or generating art, because they think that it's stealing from them. As someone who doesn't know shit about art, for me, it's all about inspiration. And if I was an artist, like all my life, I would be looking at what other artists, painters, for example, did, and I would study Monet, and I would study Leonardo da Vinci, and so I would come up with something that would be the result of all this inspiration that I got from all of them. How is that even different from an AI doing it? The AI is doing the same thing. It just studies everything else. But there's that human aspect. There's that, the word at the end of the day is, I think, I don't want to take this tangent like consciousness and inspiration and stuff. I don't want to. Let's get back.
I think we deviated quite a lot from the original.
Yeah, we deviated a lot. So Mohammed says, "Hi everybody. I would like to ask, what is the best way to become cloud solutions architect and later cloud architect, starting as a cloud developer?" No, sorry, that's a question. Starting as a cloud developer can be the right way. You want to take a stab at this, Abdel, or
I'll let you answer the question, because you are an architect, I'm not.
Okay. So starting as a cloud developer can be the right way. Starting as anything, my friend, can be the right way. Becoming an architect, as going back to Abdel's point at the beginning, it's about experience. It really takes experience. Sometimes I'm working with teams, and I'm working with some super smart people, and then I would say something and they would look at me and they're like, "Oh, dude, you're super smart." I'm like, "No, I have experience. I've seen this thing failed before. I've seen the way you're doing it, and I've just been there, done that." There's always that discussion between hard work versus experience versus intelligence versus luck versus whatever. I think a big part of being an architect is really experience, because people look up to you. Developers look up to you. Platform people look up to you. They look at you as someone who is there to guide them. And yes, we can all gather and Google stuff and figure stuff as we go and build and fail and iterate. But having someone who done this multiple times before, it just gives you that shortcut. And I think a big part of the architect role is really that, especially that you're working with multiple customers, multiple type of industries, you're solving multiple problems, and you can bring everything that you've learned together, and then try to make it work for that specific problem that you're solving. So being a cloud developer is a good path. Why? Because it will give you a lot of experience about building, developing, testing, monitoring. You will learn about what scales, what doesn't scale. You will learn that writing fewer code is better than writing a ton of code. This is something you see between someone who's experienced and someone who's a junior. Like a junior wants to prove themselves. They want to write code. They take ownership and they take pride in the code that they write. An experienced person want to write the fewer lines of code as possible. They know that more code you write equals more bugs, potential bugs, equals more tests that you need to do, equals more risk to rollbacks, more risk for failures. And that's why you see technologies like serverless, for example, serverless functions, and why the cloud took off is because it allows us to focus, it does the heavy lifting for us. And so I would say starting as a cloud developer is a great way. Starting as a full stack developer is a great way. Starting as a SRE, DevOps / platform, it's also a great way because again, you're learning about how to scale containers, when to choose a serverless versus a VM versus a container, what type of workloads you need to get as close as possible to bare metal versus what other workloads you can just use layers of abstractions. You're learning about all this memory optimization, how to optimize cost. Like, at some point, you gather all this experience and then you're able to bring it together. And that's, in my opinion, the architect role. So that's why when someone asks me as a beginner, hey, I just graduated from school and I want to become a solutions architect, I always want to say, yes, you can, but please don't be right out of school, because it's like you're putting yourself in a path for failure. It's like you're going to put that architect role and you're going to start making decisions, and they're not always going to be the right decisions because yes, you're smart. Yes, you can learn. Yes, you can read. Yes, you have GPT-3. Yes, you can Google stuff. But there's that little bit of experience that, like everything else in life, you need to, failure is part of, it's how we learn. And Andy Jassy has this quote. He says, there's no compression algorithm for experience. And that's pretty much like what Winston Churchill says, or said, you can't have a baby in 1 month by using 9 women. Just some things just take time, and experience is a big aspect of becoming a solutions architect, or becoming, an architect of any position. And you look at it also, we talk about tech, but if we step back and look at a building architect, or like a real life architect, someone who really designs the building. So you see that these people, they've been, they start as, I would say, well, first of all, there's a ton of studying that goes into mathematics and physics and all this kind of stuff. But also it takes them a lot of time before making that design that we remember them with. No one makes a breakthrough skyscraper at age 21. It really takes time, and it takes failure, and it takes learning, and it takes doing a ton of stuff, because someone can actually trust them into building this Pentagon or this sophisticated skyscraper in, I don't know, Burj Khalifa or something like that. So you can start anywhere, but you just need to go through that path in order to get to where you want. Yes, Abdel.
I mean, all you said is correct. It just like I've done a little bit of architect work because I was working in consulting role, so I was working with customers. And one of the things that was, I mean, maybe this was also your experience, is a lot of times people look at you as the ultimate seal of approval for an implementation, the person that is gonna tell them, yes, this is absolutely the right way to go, even if like there is no single answer to every single problem, but at least this is not this thing that you're doing does not follow the patterns for failure, right? Because at least you're not doing this XYZ I've seen in experience, which doesn't scale. You're not using a service that doesn't work. You're not, doing something stupid. You're not doing something obviously stupid. So that's kind of one of, and you can only gain this if you have experience, right? You can only be able to, because even for you, if somebody says like, is this good? I mean, if you don't know if it's good, you're going to say like, I don't know, right? So if you have that experience, it's better. And it's better also to have aspiration for, I mean, it's good to have aspiration to become something. It's good to have a goal for your career. It just take it one step at a time. Don't rush it. Like, these things takes time to build. The expertise takes time, basically. That's what I'm trying to say.
It does. You have no idea how many times in my career, I'm sure you've seen it in your career, where someone gets promoted to a level where they're not ready for, and they're pretty much just put there for failure. Like, someone who is a developer and they want to be a tech lead, and a couple of years, and they get the opportunity and they are a tech lead, but then they hit that wall, and then there's a high possibility that they would fail in that role, and you don't want to see them in that failure. You want to tell them, just take the time. You just need a little bit more time in your current role, so when you get that promotion, you're actually ready for it. Yeah. And there's this principle, I forgot the name, but it says that we all keep getting promoted until we get the ceiling, until we hit a place, a role. Yeah, the limits, right? Something also super interesting you said, Abdel, is about responsibility. People look up to you as the ultimate seal of approval, because ultimately, if things go haywire, you are responsible. Yes. Right? You can't blame someone else. You yes. are the one who signed on it, and it takes. You need to be. You need to be really comfortable with signing off on a project and knowing that if this design fails, I am the one who's gonna be blamed for it. You are the one who takes the hit. It's not your team. If someone is good, your team takes the credit. If someone is bad, you take the hit. But that's how responsibility goes in all organizations. Responsibility goes upwards, and you see, even you see this in the news. If there's a failure in an organization, you see the CTO, for example, stepping down, or you see the CEO stepping down, even if the CEO didn't even know about what happened. But responsibility moves upwards. And so you got to be able to take that responsibility and sleep well at night, knowing that if this thing goes bad, well, I am the one to blame. And that's why these things take time. As we've been saying, there's a human aspect to everything we do. Yes, we put the hat of technologists and nerds, but ultimately we build stuff for people. We work with people. We are people. Yes. That's like I've read some critics about Optimus, the humanoid robot that Tesla is trying to build. The guy that was dancing on on the scene, and because there's two school of thoughts. There's the Boston Dynamics school of thoughts, which is pretty much, we are going to design a specific robot for a specific environment that does a specific thing. So if you go to a car manufacturer, you'll see robots that are pretty much one arm that moves something from here. And then there's the other school of thought that says, we live in a world that is designed for humans. When we drive a car, the steering wheel is designed for a human. The chairs are designed for humans. The keyboard is designed for a human. So might as well design a multi-purpose robot that can live in our world and do stuff that interacts with humans and stuff like that. So these are two lines or schools of thoughts, but ultimately always keep in mind that we are building for humans. Even when you're UX people, for example, they know that this button needs to be this way because it's a human that's gonna build on it. There's they do PhDs in studying human behavior and where the eye goes on a specific screen. And, there's even PhDs on the amount of time a keyboard should be responsive when between the time you type on a key and you see the letter on a screen, there's this Goldilocks zone. There's this specific milliseconds latency, because more than that, you would type on it, and then it takes, I don't know, a second to see the key on the screen. You just get bored. And less than that, it would just feel superhuman, that it would feel natural. So there's a ton of things that we take for granted, but we design for humans, and we should never forget that we are building stuff for humans, very much.
And also, one thing you said, which is very interesting, is as you grow in your career and you go to more senior roles and potentially architects and stuff like that, you have to know that you will have to work with people. So you have to be a people person. If you're not a people person, I think that a lot of people, a lot of time, junior people, they just think they're just going to be in their own bubble doing things, and they will only interact through GitHub issues and Jira tickets until the end of their career. And that's arguably not how things work, right? If you're not a human, if you're not a people person, if you don't know how to talk and understand and interact with colleagues, you're going to have a very hard time, right? I mean, even if you look at like most companies, they have this like, career path for people who doesn't want to do management, right? Typically it goes something like junior, senior staff, distinguished, or, something like that. Principal, distinguished engineer. And people, when they look at the distinguished or principal engineer, they think, oh, that's like a superstar engineer who's just writing code all day, which is arguably not the case at all. Like they're just spending a lot of their time writing documents and talking in meetings and reviewing spreadsheets and talking about budgets. They are not there for their technical abilities. They are there for their experience, which allows them to help the business people steer the product, the company in a certain direction that they know is going to work, right? Like at Google Cloud, as an example, a lot of decisions about building things does not come from management and does not come from product owners. It comes from engineers. It's our distinguished engineers in the organization that goes, okay, we think that based on the feedback from our customers, we have to take this product in this direction, or we have to build this new thing or whatever, right? And then that's just a decision that trickles down through the org, and then there will be product owners assigned to it and engineers assigned to it, etc. So this is especially true when you work for a product company like, cloud, Google Cloud, AWS, whatever. Like the actual people making decisions about what we build are engineers like yourself, like the people using the product, right?
At AWS, I used to have weekly meetings with service teams where I exactly did this. So I would meet with people who build S3 or who build EC2, and I would say, hey, here's what our customers says they want to have in EC2. Here's what they want to have in S3. Here's the feedback. Like, you bring that feedback. It's actually part of the job to bring that feedback from the customers back to the engineers. And then, as you said, let it trickle down, and then that's its all dance. But pretty much that feedback, that people skills, soft skills, presentation skills, emailing, writing email skills, all those are super, super important for the job. I'm going to let you go. I'm really sorry. I promised 45 minutes. We are over an hour. This always happens when I love to talk to you. Let's just go. I want to go through the questions that we have, that people have pushed into the event. So it's the first one. What kinds of jobs you can get with the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification? I think I answered this at the beginning. So let me go to the second one. By Trevor, for someone started in the cloud, is it better to join an established company or a startup? Yeah,
I would say if you work in a startup, you would have more possibilities to try things than if you work in established companies, because established companies, they are all about, and I assume here by established companies, the person asking the question means companies using cloud, not producing it, not the actual cloud providers.
Yes.
I think in established companies, it's more about stability. So the ability or their willingness to make a change is less than in a startup, because in a startup mode, you're probably already, your footprint probably is going to be smaller. So amount of resources you're going to consume per month is smaller than a big company. So your ability to just change and try new things would probably be better, I would say.
Yeah, that's it. In a startup, you're putting more hats. You're tech lead, you're the developer, you're the product, you're gathering feedback. You learn a lot more, and the risk is low. So you can fail, you can iterate faster. As an established company, it moves a little bit slower because there's already a base, there's already a recurring revenue. You need to, there's maybe investors, whatever. So yeah, I would say when you start, take more risk. It's like when you're in 20s, take more risk. We have another question. So besides some confidence boost, the information we learned during preparation, assuming he's talking about certification preparation, that saves a lot of time later, impressing most of the wrong people and bringing you to the attention of some good people. What are certifications good for? We have a cynical. what are certifications good for? Well, my friend, you are underestimating the power of impressing the right people
Yes.
and getting the attention of the right people. Something I learned the hard way that I would say to a 19 or 20 years young me, myself, is move to Silicon Valley. Move, the proximity to where it happens. Like, you have to be where it happens. Just, I would have say, take a job, even if it means you're paid a low salary, but that gives you the opportunity to sit next to someone who built great stuff, or go to lunch in a place where all these where it basically happens. So I think impressing the right people, it's really an underestimated thing.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know, if I impress Elon Musk tomorrow, and I'm not a fan of Elon Musk by any means, but if I impress that guy, I'm sure that would create open doors. And
Yes.
so I think you should think about it that way as well. Also, it could open doors for you. Some recruiters would have pretty much, maybe they have a mandate that says hire only someone who has this certificate.
Yes.
So you're putting yourself for a success, right? Right there. What would you like to add, Abdel?
And I think also one thing I would add is that, like, I know that recruiters and HR do follow. They do care about certifications, because there are a lot of companies that just publishes. Like, every year there are publications around what's the best certification, or like how much money you would make for a certain certification. Like, there are the Gartner-like kind of publications. Yeah. They publish studies, and they're not fluff. They do benchmark. They look at how people make based on which certification they have, and they publish these things. And it's like that actually becomes a sort of reference model for HR and recruiters. And I know this for the facts. I know that people look into people certified because they have read somewhere that because this person has this certification, this means that they know what they're talking about, and therefore they are good to hire, right? So it's not just impressing the wrong people and bringing your attention to the right people. It's actually more impressing the right people, which is what you want.
Abdel Fattah says, thanks for the insightful stream. Going back to experience point, certifications in the cloud are meant to show a practical experience using the cloud. So as students, is it to go for certifications by studying for them? TLDR, if a fresh graduate has a cloud certification in resume, doesn't it defy the purpose of certification? I agree.
100%.
I think that certification should just prove that you actually know, like, take all that experience and prove it. But you shouldn't use certification to learn. You should actually use them to show that you learned, that you have experience. 100% agree. If I was, again, advice for a student, rather than go in and take a certification, participate in an open source project, start a startup, build a product. Even if it fails, no one cares. You will learn a ton of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
and also because, like, those certifications, cloud certifications are becoming more and more scenario based. They're not really like
they are,
how to say, tech bingo questions, right? They're not like, hey, what command you should type in the console to do X. They're more like, this is the scenario that we're trying to achieve. How would you use this number of products to do this, right? And especially the architect ones. So
yes.
So, like, even if you manage to pass a certification as a student, that doesn't mean that you know things, right? And it probably means you know the words and you know what the words means, but you don't know how those words and how those products actually fit in actual implementation.
It doesn't. A certification in a student's resume doesn't have the same weight as a certification in someone in a middle or even or at least someone who has professional experience.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Abdel. So this is for you. How important is CKA certification? I think that's Kubernetes administrator certification in the era of managed Kubernetes services.
I think it's still very relevant because there is still a lot of companies that doesn't actually do manage Kubernetes. There is tons of companies that self-manage their own things.
Are they massive? Like, why? Do they like pain?
Many reasons. I think one of the main one is, I mean, it's becoming less and less of a problem now because a few years back, no one offered like manage Kubernetes in your own data center, right? No one managed at least, like, no one gave you like a are ready to deploy Kubernetes. So you still had to go and take the open source binaries and deploy them yourself. So you have to know what you're doing, right? So now it's becoming more and more with AWS Outpost, which has EKS in it, or GKE Anthos, which has basically GKE in it, or whatever Microsoft is doing. So it's becoming more and more like the gap between your own data center and the cloud is getting smaller and smaller. And also all the cloud providers are expanding their footprint. They're deploying more regions in zones or countries where they didn't have regions before. But for regulatory reasons, and then there is also this whole part of the industry we don't see that much, which is the regulated industries, right? Things like banks, financial institutions, security, governments and stuff like that, which they don't want to be on the cloud for many reasons. So I think it's still very relevant. But in my experience, when I took the certification, the CKA, it was just relevant to understand Kubernetes, basically, and know how to fix it when it breaks. CKA is like 90% troubleshooting questions, just for you to know. It's a lot of scenario-based, this thing is broken, fix it, right? And again, I went into it just knowing a little bit of Kubernetes and a lot of things about Linux, because at the end of the day, it runs on top of Linux. So if you know Linux, it's easy to understand. So
yeah, that was the use case for me when I got CKA. It was just my customer wanted to run Kubernetes on their own. They were running like a hybrid model, and they were my customer, so I had to learn how to troubleshoot Kubernetes. And that's why I took the CKA as well. But now we have developers using this managed Kubernetes services and deploying clusters and scaling them and securing them. And so I don't know what the future. Yeah,
I'm going to make a prediction here. I don't do this very often. In 25 years from now, there will be a mayor of some city standing in a news conference asking for people who know Kubernetes. Because one thing we're very bad at doing is we don't think, or we don't keep in the back of our head that whenever new stuff shows up, there is always legacy. And legacy stays around. Like it's not easy to get rid of legacy. Once you build something because there was no solution that could do it better for you, and then a new solution that would do it better for you exists, it's very hard to migrate to it. If you don't migrate to it, that legacy will exist, will remain behind, right? Yeah. So I'm quite sure that like 50 years from now, you will be able to buy a Google Cloud data center, stick it in your own basement, and have all the services accessible to you, and you will still have customers with Kubernetes clusters.
I don't know, man. I'm more optimist. I would say in 25 years, you would use some kind of neural link thing to just send the thought to some kind of API somewhere that would build this whole, like, you would think about a website. You want to build a business, and so it would generate the website for you. It would generate A/B testing for you. It would generate write copywriting. It would deploy it on the cloud or whatever we call it. Maybe we'll call it the moon at that point, because we'll figure out that hosting stuff on the moon is cheaper than hosting it here on Earth, and because it's cold, we don't need to keep the servers cool. And we have a new protocol that allows us to transfer data, light fast or whatever. So yeah, I don't think we would have, because think about it. We've been only doing this whole computer science thing for maybe 80 years, maybe 70 years. It's still new. We're still not even teenagers. We're still babies doing this thing. So as we grow and we get to the teenage phase, and then we learn and we become mature, I think it will change. We will not be making the same mistakes, because yes, we still struggle. Banks still struggle with this COBOL legacy because they didn't have the tools that we have right now to migrate. It was mainframes. It was risky. They didn't have this blue-green canary stuff. They didn't have cloud with managed services. So they had to just, if it's not broken, don't touch it.
Don't fix it.
But I think going forward, I think the barrier to move away from legacy is getting lower and lower and lower.
That's also true. Yes, that's also true. And especially also most cloud providers are providing people with migration tools. They're working actually on giving you a tool to migrate from one thing to another. I think I would recommend that you bring Jalal. Jalal.
Yes.
I think you would. Yes, I think you should bring him here, because you will have a very good discussion about the future. I am more cynical. I am more pessimistic toward this.
I had a discussion with him on Twitter, and I told him, dude, like I've been hearing about no code for 20 years. It's still not, it's still not here.
Yes, I think he would probably be very good to discuss this topic of like what's gonna happen in 20 years.
All right, I'll take a note of that.
Yeah, and he's even much older than me, and I am more pessimistic than him, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'll try my best to bring him here on the pod. Anything else? I think we're gonna have to stop here. I have other questions for you, other subjects for you, but I'm gonna keep those for the next episode. Anything else you wanna say to end this?
I think that we should probably, overall, my recommendation is just be optimistic. I think the future is gonna look better than we think it's gonna look. And I think that because we are, as humans, as I said always, we are in our own bubble looking at the world from our own POV. It's very hard to actually know what's going to happen 10, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Instead of just worrying about the future, I think we should just live in the moment and just, it's going to be fine. And like, there will be a recession, but it's going to be fine.
It will. I'm really optimistic. I really think that we will, like climate change, for example, I really believe in my heart that at some point, we will do all it takes to stop it, revert it. I really believe, maybe it's candid, maybe it's naive, but I really think that as humans, this collective intelligence that we have, we will do the right things for the future. The future is gonna be bright. There's gonna be no nuclear war. At least, that's how I wake up every morning. I can't think of otherwise. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be depressed. So I really hold to these beliefs. As humans, we will do the right things when the stakes are high. We will get together. And so let's keep optimistic, focus on the present.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing, and this is something I wanted to talk about earlier. One recommendation I would make to people, this is something I started doing about a year ago. So here it is. I'm a technical advisor in 2 startups. There's just 2 startups started by 2 different companies. Friend of mine, they just reach out and it's like, we're going to use Google Cloud. We need somebody who knows Google Cloud. It takes me 1 hour per week plus another hour scattered through the week, just answering questions on Slack. I do this purely for $0. It's free work, but I do it purely for the reason that I want to learn what they're doing. They're doing some stuff that are outside of my expertise, and it's purely for the reasons that I get first-hand access to information because I'm working with the founders. So if you have if you are a senior engineer and you have enough baggage that you can share, one other forum we can share it is just work with the startup, help them build things on top of something that framework, a tool, a programming language, a cloud provider, whatever. You will learn tons of stuff from there.
All right. On this bombshell, thank you, Abdel. Great to have you as always. Thank you, everyone in the chat. It's been really great to have you here with us, and I'm sure you will become a regular, Abdel.
I'm sure I will.
To have you more. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you, folks. Bye.